Kato Eleri strides down the mountain path towards the settlement of Ravencliff. Lagging behind is the 8-year-old boy who was sent to fetch him, whose stamina, after his mile-long run up to the top of the cliff, his stamina is not enough to keep up with this, long-legged man, maybe just recently became a man, Kato, who is, striding with purpose down this mountain because he knows that when he reaches Ravencliff, he will be speaking with Padma, his surrogate mother, who has something to tell him about his sister. Welcome, traveler, to the Ironlands, and welcome back to my second video, my second gaming session. I'm very excited to have you, and goodness, right as I started talking, the sounds outside of the city just... But, welcome back, and when last we left Kato, he was arriving down at the town of Ravencliff, which I found an image that I kind of liked on here, and I imagine Kato hurrying down this mountain. He sent his raven ahead, his raven Barda, and he's not really noticing this boy lagging behind him because he's so intent on this troublesome event that has been hinted at. So to begin this session, I think we arrive back at Ravencliff, and I found another picture that I also kind of like, and it's kind of this tall house, maybe in the middle of town, and I actually imagine that this is where Padma, the mystic, actually lives, and where Kato and Mila, his sister, were maybe raised as the sculled children of the mystic. So first off, I have been in here in Roll20 a little bit since yesterday when I recorded the first video. Mostly I was just cleaning stuff up because I realized that I could use the character sheet for Kato to just kind of pretty much do everything, and so I didn't even really need the other one that was kind of I'd set up in Roll20, the other character sheet that was all clunky and everything. So everything's over here now, and I also have added a couple of handouts. So we have a map handout which has the description of Ravencliff that I haven't finished doing, but it's now linked to a map spot here in the Veiled Mountains of the Ironlands, and then we have our NPCs, our bonds, and we have our truths, which are all lined up here. So the old world, iron, those sorts of things from back in session 0. So Kato arrives with Padma, and I think the first thing is I want to know a couple of things about Padma before we enter really into the scene. So maybe he, maybe Kato comes through, I imagine, like this outer palisade of like maybe even whole logs that have been kind of stuck down in the ground around this settlement. Maybe they're 8 feet high. These just poles that have been sunk into the ground as a defensive measure against the dangers that lurk in the Veiled Mountains. So he kind of comes through the gate, which I imagine is kind of standing open because it's during the day, and there's probably not like any particular watchman at the gate, but they close and bar it at the night, and at night people are watching out. But during the day, the gate stands open. People go about their business, and he comes in, maybe taking his hood back as he runs, and he looks over his shoulder at the boy as the boy runs in after him, or maybe like jogs slowly in after him on his short little 8-year-old legs, and And Kato says, "Do you need anything else, boy?" And the boy says, The mystic promised if I got you quickly, she would have a copper penny for me." And Kato actually like chuckles a little bit at that, because that's like a thing. The little kid, you send him, I'll pay you a copper penny if you do your chores. So he maybe chuckles a little bit, and I think he reaches into his own belt pouch and holds up a penny and flicks it to the boy, and the boy like catches it out of midair and says, "Thank you, Master Eleri, sir." And then he, nods his head respectfully and dashes off into one of the side streets, maybe towards in the direction of the newer part of town, where kind of the growing number of converts to Mila's faith have been kind of staying and maybe building their homes, and maybe it's actually outside of this palisade, actually, because so Ravencliff then is this palisade with a bunch of strong cabins and wooden buildings inside, and then maybe outside against the palisade huddles kind of a smaller but growing area of the town where these converts to Mila's faith, which we haven't really interacted with yet, the converts to her faith have been gathering, and they don't have permanent homes inside of the palisade already, because the palisade was built maybe several years ago, or finished maybe a couple decades ago, when the first people moved here, and there's not space for them inside the walls. So the boy dashes back to in that direction, and I think Kato is actually... Here's an interesting question. When the boy is nice to Kato, is Kato like used to that? Or remember from our truths, we had decided that Kato is one of the Skuld. So the old world is the reason that people came to the Ironlands. Like, why are they on this fucked up peninsula on the northernmost reaches of the world with all these dangers and cursed shit? It's because something happened in the old world that caused them to flee. So our truth in our version of the Ironlands is the savage clans called the Skuld invaded the kingdoms of the old world. Our armies fell. Most were killed or taken into slavery. Those who escaped set sail aboard anything that would float. After an arduous months-long voyage, the survivors made landfall upon the Ironlands. So, one of the quest seeds that was given to us, that was recommended to us in our book here, was, I will find your world, your truths. The quest starter was, you are a descendant of the Skuld. Because of your heritage, your family has long borne the distrust of your fellow Ironlanders. Now, blah 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 blah. So I like the idea that Kato and his sister Mila are only a couple generations ago, the Skuld were ravaging the old world and causing the people here to flee. But we arrived also, and so are we used to people treating us with disrespect, maybe a little bit of fear, maybe, is there a negative association with the Skuld, and particularly like our family in the town? And so I don't know. I'm going to roll a percentile dice to see whether the people of Ravencliff, whether Kato has grown up with the people of Ravencliff treating him and Mila poorly because of their culture's attacks upon these people's ancestors, or not even too long ago, like a couple generations back. So we are going to roll a D100, well, 2D10 also. The first one being the the tens place, and the other one being the units place. So we'll roll those, and we got a 2 and a 6. So 2 and a 6, 26. I'm just running with my usual 0 to, or excuse me, I guess 1 to 49 is a no, and a higher number is a yes. So 26 is a no. So the people of Ravencliff are, luckily for Kato and Mila, maybe their parents came here and they were nice and they weren't these warlike skuld that the people had come to fear over all this time. So, gosh, we're almost 10 minutes in and I still haven't gotten to the first scene. But the world building stuff is very important at the beginning, I think, of the adventure, and especially when we're developing an idea of who this character is, so that later actions and changes in the character will be more, they'll feel more grounded in the reality that we've created, the fantasy reality that we've created. So, Kato and Mila's parents arrived in Ravencliff, maybe even their grandparents, and they were nice. They were just these kind of this couple of researchers with a couple of young children, and they didn't really bother anybody in the town. They went off into the mountains occasionally, and they would come back and they would have research, and maybe sometimes their research helped the people of the town in maybe odd small ways. And so people generally have a non-negative association with Kato and his sister. And so even that, I believe, is probably augmented now by the fact that Mila is now kind of one of not a leader, but one of the up-and-coming young people, or maybe the up-and-coming young person in this town. It's probably not got very many people. So she is like the young, the leader of her generation, almost. And so there's like a positive association instead, where people are generally like pretty respectful to Master Eleri and his sister, the priestess. So Kato tosses the boy the coin. He dashes off into the street, and Kato, he's glad for this moment alone because he can kind of steel himself to go to his home, and he probably comes in at the bottom floor. I imagine that Padma lives above some sort of like a shop or something. Like, this is the village mystic, and magic in our lands, actually, one of our truths is that mysticism. Some still find comfort in the old ways. They call on mystics to divine the fortune of their newborn, or ask them to perform rituals to invoke a bountiful harvest. Others act out of fear against those who they suspect of having power. However, most folk believe true magic, if it ever existed, is lost to us now. So, she's a mystic, but I imagine that she's also more of like an herbalist or like a healer. So they call her a mystic, maybe, and she seems to occasionally maybe do something that the herbs by themselves wouldn't be able to accomplish, or the herbs and the things that she uses wouldn't normally be able to heal this sickness or heal this wound. But she has like the magic touch. So there's like a little air in town of like she's got her healing abilities are like a little bit more than natural. So I imagine that she runs some sort of shop beneath, and that's kind of how she serves the people of the town. Maybe not as a healer, but maybe as like, a sort of mystical functionary. And then above that, in kind of the second and third level of the building, which is probably one of the taller buildings in town, she has, living spaces, and that's where Kato has grown up. So what kind of stuff does Padma have in the shop underneath her home? So we will go to Kato here, and under oracles, I think we will get a theme. Let's see, what are these? Are random basically our random generators. Yeah, we're gonna get a theme and another theme. So our first theme is survival, and our second theme is corruption. So yeah, I think she is a sort of healer, but not just a healer of physical wounds and illnesses, but also of maybe like the corruption that kind of seeps into people of this land, like the dark. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, so this is like a harsh, rugged, fucking beat you down into the ground and grind your teeth into the frickin' dirt place. The Veiled Mountains are harsh, and the winters are hard, and scary things happen to people here, and people get corrupted by this constant stress and fear, and they come to her to heal them. But I think that Padma's also, she's just talking to them. I think she's almost like a therapist role to many of the people of Ravencliff. Yeah, she helps them to survive the corruption of the place by providing them with what we would probably call therapy, but they consider like special magic. Like maybe she listens to them talk about their things, then maybe she gives them some piece of insight or wisdom that she has from her her long life. How old is Padma? Let's I want her to be somewhere between, well, we'll roll a D100, and I think if it's under 30, then that just won't work, because she has been taking care of these two younger people. So we'll say roll D100. 34. So she is 34 years old. She's a young woman. How old are Kato and Mila then? Because if Padma is only, man, she's like an accomplished young lady then. But so Padma is only 34, and say Kato and Mila came to live with her when they were, well, what age were they? I think we're going to be, it's like probably 12 or under, so we're going to roll 1d12. 1. So Kato couldn't have been 1 year old when they came to live with them, because Mila is his younger sister. That was something I kind of arbitrarily decided at the beginning, because, well, not arbitrarily, but executively, I chose at the beginning because I like the dynamic, and I wanted to play with the dynamic of kind of this older brother with kind of this protective instinct towards his younger sister, but also she is kind of this powerful figure. So not like eclipsing the older sibling, but she's definitely much more in the spotlight than he is. And though she has this kind of this strength, he also has this older sibling worry for her. So I know what I'll do. I think that here's what we'll do. We're going to okay, yeah. So I think that if you roll 2d6, you're bound to get like you're more likely to get a higher answer. Just like statistically, as far as I'm aware. So anyway, he was 12 when Kato was 12 when Mila and he were kind of taken in by Padma. And so if he was 12, then that would have been, and now he's what, like 22, so 10 years ago. So she was 24, and she took in 12-year-old Kato and his younger sister, who is, maybe what, 3 years younger. So, and his 9-year-old sister, and she took them in, and they've been living with her ever since. And so I think because of their age difference, like as time has gone on, there's a shorter gap between a 24-year-old and a 34-year-old than there is between a 12-year-old and a 24-year-old. So Kato, maybe as he's become more of an adult, he has more of a, I really, like almost like a respectful, like almost like she's his older sibling. I like that dynamic. So he has the older sibling dynamic with Mila, but he also kind of has this mother / older sibling taking care of them dynamic with Padma. And it's definitely been shifting more towards the, almost like, your older friend relationship as time has gone on. Very cool how a couple of dice rolls can create all of this very fun, interesting stuff. This is one of the reasons that I think I'm very excited to be playing a solo RPG, because it's all improv, but like with good, as with all good improv, it is guided by a certain logic and context, and you get to take things. You're not just plucking things out of midair. I learned this when I did improv several years ago in high school for several years. But you're not just plucking things out of thin air. You take the randomness that is given to you, and you get to create using that as the seed, and then contexting and logicking around that. So it's very cool that we have this kind of already this relationship dynamic. And so the original question that I wanted to ask, if you watch me do this kind of stuff, I will get sidetracked, because all of these things coming into play with one another is what I love about storytelling. So I will get sidetracked occasionally, not in the middle of something intense happening once we get to this scene, but when things are kind of building out, things will continue to build out, and that's just how I am accustomed to storytelling in my writing. So we have this shop underneath the home of Padma, and it is here that she doesn't only sell, so she does have her like herbalism and her first aid and all of that, all of those supplies. Probably there are Kato comes in to this in under the eaves here. Ooh, is that a dude? That's a dude. So this building is actually like pretty big. I didn't imagine it being this big. Okay, so maybe this isn't a person. So imagine that this building is smaller, and it has space on the bottom for several large rooms. And in one of those rooms, when you walk in, he opens the door, and it's a brisk afternoon, and so a little cold wafts in with him, but he closes the door swiftly behind him, and he takes off his heavy cloak and maybe hangs it by the door, as you do when you're coming home, right? And maybe he takes his shoes off too. No, he doesn't have time for that. So he takes off his cloak and puts it on there, because he knows that it's got maybe some snow or moisture on it, and he doesn't want it to go dripping around the place. But on the bottom, when he walks in, is the first room of the downstairs, which is, there's maybe these hanging bundles of herbs that are drying and being prepared, and then there are maybe a bunch of jars, little clay jars, filled with pastes and salves and powders that Padma has gathered and prepared over the years. And I think that Kato just kind of glosses over that, though, because he's used to all of this stuff. Like, he has gathered some of these herbs from the mountainsides nearby, or ventured into the forest to gather roots that they could then grind into these pastes and these powders. So he kind of glosses over that, and he walks in, and then there's a door to the the second smaller room, which has in one corner like a staircase going up to the next story, and the rest of it is kind of more, not more casual, but this is the front room that he walks into is like a shop, and the second room is more of a this is where Padma, you know, does her therapy sessions. This is where she kind of magically heals the people or gives them her wisdom or whatever it is. And this is, so there's maybe a stove in this room. Not like, I don't think it has like a fireplace, but maybe there's like a, this is one of the houses that has a really nice iron stove that you know, you feed with fire, and it has the pipe, the chimney. I was thinking, what do you call a chimney pipe? This has this chimney that goes up, and it's warm in there, and Padma is waiting for him. So she is sitting there, and there's actually, I think, probably a window in this room, and the window is standing open, and Padma is sitting by the stove, which is, you know, not lit yet, but there's a stack of firewood beside it, and she is sitting there in, you know, just a chair, and sitting maybe on the back of the chair beside her is Barda, the raven. And Padma, when Kato walks in, you know, she hears the door open and then his boots stomping in the herbalist's shop, and he comes in looking around like he's going to go up to the stairs, and he kind of stops when he sees her sitting by the stove, and she says, "Your bird told me that you would be coming." And maybe Barda, kind of when he sees Kato arrive, kind of like hops from the back of the chair onto her shoulder, and then kind of flutters across the room and does a little flutter swoop and lands on a bookcase by the door that has, you know, 4 or 5 books on it that you know, are probably pretty valuable in like the frontier lands. So Padma's not doing bad for herself for a 34-year-old woman in the wilderness. Not bad at all. So lands on this bookshelf kind of by the door by Kato, and kind of like does a beak open without like squawking at him. Is kind of just like, hey bro. So Kato says, indeed, I sent him. The boy told me that you. The boy told me that you had something to tell me about Mila. Where is she? And Padma, well, what is the problem with Mila? That's where the scene is. So we're entering into scene 2, and Padma's gonna have to tell him what's up with Kato's sister. So in our Kato folder, we'll go to the oracles, and I think what happened to her is probably an action and theme, so we are going to check in here, and initiate possession is what Padma is about to tell him. So I think initiate possession, initiate the possession, initiation of possession. Oh, okay. Here's what happened, is Mila has been possessed by something, or something has started to possess her, but not in like a spirit, but in the way of like an urge, like a desire that's welling up inside of her from within the kind of within the same place inside of her that brings her powerful religious convictions in a land where religion is nothing. Religion is forgotten and cast aside. But she has this strong faith, and possessing her from inside of this same place in her spiritual center is this urge to do something, which is the urge to, we don't know. I think it's probably action and theme again. Raid blood. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, that's bloodthirsty. Okay. The only things that immediately jump to my mind, right, are like, it's time to fucking, I've been preaching you about this new god, time to go fucking get some blood for this god. But I don't think that fits, because the kind of the thing that I don't think that this comes from that this religion that, or this faith that Mila is sharing, is that kind of aggressive type of thing. Reason being that this is already a very, like, a harsh, violent place, and people aren't really going to be flocking necessarily to a religion that is just promising more of the same, like, join our group and we'll do violent things to our neighbors. Like, on the one hand, that is something that, you know, people will be inspired maybe and will rise up behind someone who can promise, like, you just have to fight and you will be rewarded in this religion. But I don't think they, like, that doesn't give them hope, right? That just gives them, like, a purpose. I think that Mila's faith is almost like more of a hope thing, like, believe in me and believe in this faith, and we will create something better together. And that's why that's kind of why Kato, despite his grim demeanor, is kind of willing to put his full force behind his sister on this one. So, raid blood, then, I think that it actually means that some sort of sacrifice is required, like a blood sacrifice, and Mila is preparing to this urge, that, like, this deep understanding she has that something needs to be given, a blood sacrifice, like a very deep personal thing must be given, and she is preparing to journey out into the mountains to, here we go, this is where the adventure comes. Mila is preparing to adventure out into the mountains to give this blood sacrifice to something that she will encounter. Maybe she knows what it is, maybe she doesn't know what it is, but maybe it will reveal itself to her and to us. But I think as of yet she's just upstairs. Maybe I hear the sounds of feet on the second story up here, where Mila and I have our rooms. Mila and Kato have our rooms, and I think that I hear her moving around, and I say, and Padma tells me about Mila explaining to her that she's going to go out into the mountains, and she's going to be, you know, sacrificing of herself for her flock, for the people of her faith. I feel like we should know more about Mila's faith now, but maybe we'll learn more when we talk to our sister. So Kato, you know, he hears this, and his frickin' protective instincts are kicked into gear, and he starts to, you know, to head determinedly towards the stairs, as if to, you know, I'll tell her that what she's going to do, and it's not going to be a blood sacrifice, I'll tell you that. But Padma, I think, actually rises and puts a hand on Kato's arm as he's about to stride past her and up the stairs, and he looks down. Like, I think he's kind of a tall, like, young man, and though she's still a young woman at 34, he's like outgrown her. So he kind of looks down into her face, and she has this expression of, like, you know, think before you act. And she tells him, Padma tells him, I understand your desire to protect your sister, Kato. It's something that I've always admired about you. But you must understand that in this world we are all responsible for our own actions, and all that you can do is what is in your power to do, and you must leave Mila to take care of herself as she becomes her own woman. And Kato kind of, like, he pauses, like he tenses, like he wants to just pull away and storm off and you know, do what he wants. But Padma, you know, he has this respect for Padma. Padma is a mother figure to him, an older sibling figure, somebody who is known to be wise, and you know, he has this deep respect for her, and he even though he wants to kind of he doesn't, and he takes a breath and nods and says, I think he says, I will do that, mother. I will do that, mother. But and I think that he calls Padma mother intentionally, as like a not that she is his mother, but maybe it's like a term of respect. And she recognizes that, and she kind of lets go, and he goes upstairs to his sister. Upstairs, he arrives to find that the room that they share, I think they probably have like a small room with 2 beds that they've been living in and sharing since they were small, and maybe there's a chest that Mila has that has, you know, what possessions she owns, and maybe there's a chest that Kato has, you know, with their clothes and their things, but instead of being closed with their stuff, the possessions on the inside, Mila has the stuff out on her bed, and maybe some of it's on Kato's bed as well. I think that Kato's side of the room is like militarily Spartan and clean and orderly, and there's like an invisible line down the middle, and Mila's side is much more you know, harried and you know, covered in this thing and that thing, and normally it's like split down the middle. Like Mila is a little bit more chaotic in terms of her organizational skills, but today the mess has kind of spread out, and you know, there are clothes on the bed, and there are you know, possessions and a couple rations of food on Kato's side of the room, just kind of sitting on his, maybe the table, the simple table by the bed and on the mattress. And Kato stands in the doorway. He like comes up and he stops and says, Mila, what are you doing? And Mila is maybe, I think she has like a big backpack. You know, one of those ones that you can throw on your back and it covers you from like shoulder all the way down to hip. And you know, has like some rope slung on the side, like a freaking adventurer's pack. And so she has this big, bulky leather backpack sitting open, and it's maybe half full of, you know, like the heavy square stuff that you put at the bottom. So it's sitting up on its own, but she's like stuffing some clothes into it, and she stops, kind of freezes, and turns, and then relaxes when she sees her brother. Like maybe Padma had tried to argue with her or talk her out of it already, and she suspected that Padma was coming back, but she relaxes a little when she sees her brother, and says, Kato, have you spoken with Padma? And Kato just gives her a look and says, what do you mean to do? And she tells him, a sacrifice must be made, Kato. Not just for me, for you, and for our mother, and for our parents, and for all those who have chosen to follow me this past year. And Kato's kind of frustrated by this. Like, you can tell that, I think that Kato does believe in his sister's purpose. I think that he has faith in her faith and in the religion that she preaches, which I want to leave it a little bit vague because it hasn't come up narratively yet, split-second decision, but he believes in her religion, but he doesn't, it's not just like a blind faith, because he also knows the woman behind the religious kind of, but he knows the Mila behind the priestess as the people call her. So he he doesn't like angrily stride in, but he strides in with a purpose, and he goes to sit on his bed, and he sees that something's there, and he like gives her a look like, keep your shit on your half of the room, and kind of sits down and says, where do you intend to go? And I think that is the next question for the fates to decide. Now here's the question: is she going on a longer journey, or like almost like a spirit quest for her religion, or is she just going out for like a couple days to a spot in the mountains that's like calling to her, where she'll perform like a rite and become like a priestess in full, chosen by whatever religious forces are at play? I think what we'll do is we'll roll a d2 on that. So 1, it's close by, and 2, it's further away. And after that, we'll have a better idea of like what her intentions are. So roll d2. A 1. So it is somewhere close. She's not going to be journeying out into like the Tempest Hills or the hinterlands. It's going to be somewhere local. And she says, Kato, I promise, I'll be back in just a couple of days. And Kato says, you may not have a couple of days. The winter snows are coming early this year, and we know that storms can strike without warning. Where is it that you plan exactly on heading? And Mila, I think, well, does she know? Let's here's what we'll do is we will roll on the fate chart to see like where is she going? So locations. There you are. Location, hideout. Okay, this is perfect. So location is a road, and a theme is a debt. Okay, so okay, here I like this. Okay, so Mila says, do you know the old road? That was Kato's voice. Do you know the old road that heads into the mountains? And Kato says, yes, it isn't that old. It's just, I'm really messing up with my voices, but oh well, it's all part of the fiction. Kato says, yes, of course, he knows this old road. It heads out of town, and it actually wasn't built by the people who built the Ravencliff. It was there already, and it's kind of this old, just flat stone path that kind of journeys into the mountains, maybe for a little ways, and then it kind of breaks apart. And following it beyond that is kind of a useless measure, because you can tell, the people who live here can tell, like, oh, it's just going off into the into the nothing. It just goes like into the mountainside or whatever. And Mila says, beyond the old road there is a debt that must be paid. And Kato is like, I don't understand. And Mila says, it is not for you to understand, brother. That is my burden. And Kato says, like, he's not going to stop his sister. Like, he has too much respect for her and her convictions, and he trusts her. But what he does do is, this moment is when he swears the Iron Vow! Alright, this is perfect. This is the Ironsworn just coming in after, an hour-ish of play. He's making his Iron Vow. So, quest moves. Swear an Iron Vow. So actually this is, if we go to our campaign setup summary, we have envision your inciting incident. That's kind of what's happening right now. Set the scene. We've set the scene. Swear an iron vow. Make the move and write down your vow. And then take your next steps. So, swear an iron vow. So, what happens then is, I think, Kato reaches down to his hip and he pulls out their father's knife. And so, in Ironsworn, you swear an oath upon iron to kind of signify, like, it's a very powerful oath that you are swearing, a vow, and it's like some superstition says that it's because the old gods can hear when you speak upon the iron. This is the moment that Kato, reaches down to his hip and he drags forth his father's iron blade. And now remember that their parents were skulled, and so I thought about this a little bit earlier when I thought, okay, I want to give him something cool and iron to swear on. So I imagine that the skulled have they're a different culture, like a different civilization, so they also have different weapons. So the knife that Kato draws is actually a kukri, which is kind of an East Asian type of knife with this kind of cool blade that curves a little bit, gets wider at the tip, and it's traditionally, I think, used for like chopping a lot of foliage, almost like an Asian machete. I actually don't know the origins of machetes. Here's what you get when you watch a game with a storyteller and writer. Origins of machete. The first machete was made in Spain and re-engineered from the quasi-sword. Okay, so Asian machete, but it's not a short sword, and it's not like a little dagger. It's like a little bit more hefty, kind of like a machete is. And he pulls it out, and this is their father's blade, and he kind of kneels and holds it up to her, and this is when we swear the vow. And he says, what does Kato say when he swears? He says, by the gods of our father, and by the gods of this land, and by your god, I swear, I will follow you to pay this debt, and I will protect you to the best of my strength. And so, after the ambulance passes, and immediately an ambulance arrived because Kato cut his fingers on the very sharp kukri knife. But no, so we are going to swear an iron vow, which is a moves. This, oh my gosh, this character sheet is so nice. It even has probably, I think, all the rules for everything. Okay, adventure moves, combat moves, quest moves, swear an iron vow. Alright, so we swear an iron vow. Stat. What stat do we use? Okay, when you swear an iron vow, when you swear upon iron to complete a quest, write your vow and give the quest a rank, then roll plus heart. If you make this vow to a person or community with whom you share a bond, add +1. Okay, so God's stat. Oh, different thing. So I get stat, I get heart, which unfortunately I think my heart is quite low. I think it's +1. But I get that, and I get +1 from having a bond with Mila. And here we go, the first swear an iron vow roll. Alright. Miss. A miss. You face a significant obstacle before you can begin your quest. Envision what stands in your way. Ask the Oracle of Unsure and choose one. You press on, suffer -2 momentum, and do what you must to overcome this vow, or to overcome this obstacle. You give up. Forsake your vow. Well, I can't forsake my vow. This is the first vow we made. God damn it. Well, we're going to write down the vow first before we figure out what stands in Kato's way. God damn it. So, character sheet. Inciting incident. Kato swears, I will protect my sister and help her to pay her debt at the old road. What's a cool name for the road? I don't like just like the old road. It's kind of lame. Settlement names, maybe? Quick settlement name. Historical. No. What? Settlement. A historical event. What happened here? 60. Okay. 60 is new settlement name. Longland. New. Oh, 9765. That's what that is. Okay. Longland. What? That's a lame name. Okay. Let's try that again. Wolf Ridge. There we go. So at the old road along Wolf Ridge. That's there we go. That's some flavor. So Kato Eleri, I will protect my sister and help her to pay her debt at the old road along Wolf Ridge. And I think this is something dangerous, but it's not formidable. She said that she'd be back. We'd be back in a couple days. This is our first quest, and I want us to be able to get through it in this session, maybe if we can, so that's so we have that in our chapter 2 dialogue, or maybe in our chapter 3. We'll be done with it. So I will protect my sister and help her pay her debt at the old road along Wolf Ridge. A dangerous quest, but unfortunately, we face a setback. Suffer -2 momentum. So first of all, we take our momentum down to 0, and we must overcome this a significant obstacle. So I think the obstacle in this case is that Mila tells us that we can't come. Or she tells Kato that he, maybe she has a different, maybe she has something different in mind for him that that he needs to accomplish for her. So she says, actually, I like that idea. I want to help my sister and to protect her, but first, she says, there is something that you must do for me. And Kato says, I have sworn upon my blade, I will do what you wish. And she says, do something. And I have no idea what she's throwing in our path. So, action and theme. Break nature. Break nature. How is break nature, or nature break? Break the nature, breakage of nature. What does that have to do with her her debt that needs to be paid, and how can Kato help? So I think that what this means is that Mila is going to the old road. Okay, here's what she says. I've been having dreams, brother. I have been experiencing this growing urge upon my soul. Until today, I knew I could fight it no longer. I must go to Wolf Ridge to pay a debt to the Veiled Mountains for the reason that the land is so harsh to us is the break that we have had with the nature around us. The land is like a living creature, brother, and for too long the people who lived upon it and within it did not give it its due. Now we are punished with early winters, and even the spring and summer are harsh. But if I pay this debt, it will be the first step towards renewing a great relationship that will bring prosperity to to our town, to my flock, to all of our people. This, I truly believe, is what Mother and Father were seeking in these mountains. A way to create a better world for us, for you and for me, and for all those who suffered under the hands of the Skald. And maybe she is getting kind of impassioned as she speaks. And Kato, as he hears this, like, she's a religious leader, right? Like, even though she's only 21 years old, she knows how to speak, and when she speaks, she's moved by this passion that is conveyed in her demeanor, and she has this charisma. So Kato says, like Kato feels that she believes, and he kind of believes what she's telling him, because she has this force of personality. So actually, let's see if there's a move for this. I want to see if there's a move that maybe a relationship move that has to do with an NPC telling you suffer move. No, I'm not suffering yet until I go on that situation. Okay, compel. I'm to persuade someone. No. Sojourn. You spend your time in a community seeking assistance. No. Challenge someone to a duel. Mila, duel me now. Forge a bond when you spend significant time with a person or community. Stand together to face hardships or make sacrifices. No. Test your bond. Your bond is tested through conflict, betrayal, or circumstance. Not yet. I'm not conflicted with Mila, and there hasn't been a betrayal. I think the circumstances are... I think this is the first time that our relationship is really maybe tested. In that I have already sworn myself to her cause. That's Kato's background vow, is I will bring Mila's faith to all of the Ironlands. Like, that's his epic, in Dungeons and Dragons terms, that's his, like, epic destiny. Is, like, he's promised his sister, I will help you to do this thing, to bring your faith to all the people. But maybe he made that vow when he was a little bit younger, a little bit less, like maybe a couple years ago he made this vow, or a year or more, and since then he's kind of just been, like, things haven't changed much, because she's just been, going about her preaching and gathering a crowd, and he hasn't really been called upon to step forward and really do anything with that. Like, he's been kind of in the background, and now she tells him, this break that like, he wants to fulfill his brotherly protection of her, but she is ordering him, as somebody that he has sworn to, he has sworn a vow to, like, you can't do this, you have to do something else for me first. And that's like that is kind of a test on their relationship. But I don't think, goodness, where are moves? Strengthen your bond, choose one. Weak hit, you fragile, miss. You have no interest in maintaining this. Yeah, so we're not, like, he is going to do as she asks, in order to fulfill this other vow of, I will protect my sister and help her pay her debt. So, and that kind of comes into the I will help her pay her debt part. So I think that in order to help Mila pay her debt to kind of the spirits of the Veiled Mountains, that she is maybe interacting with in some way, Kato needs to get some sort of nature-y thing and bring it with her, so that when she pays this debt, it's like an offering. Like maybe it's a tree. Maybe he needs to get, like, a seed of a particular tree that that she can bring to, like, a sacred place along the old road, and she can do like a ritual and plant the seed to kind of symbolically and spiritually represent the renewing of this relationship with the land that her faith preaches. I like that. So she tells him, that he has to go and find the seeds of a a particular type of tree to come and help her. And let's see, is there any random tables that might help me to figure out like what is actually standing in his way of just like not just going out and picking up a pine cone? Pay the price, endure harm, character goal, descriptor, no, location descriptor, okay. Okay, so let's put a location descriptor on this place, and actually a second one. So empty and settled, those just I just don't think those go together. Actually, of course they do. There is a okay. Here's what it is. Mila tells Kato, "I have seen visions, visions of a place that was once settled, but is now empty. A place where the ancient ones, those who built the old road, and the civilization that existed before we arrived." This is all part of the Session 0 backstory stuff, but I think at least the civilization that existed before we arrived had a tree in the center of this stone village. And I don't think that Mila's actually ever seen a city. So when she describes this place, she's visual. Like I'm imagining almost like Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings, where there's like this tree inside of this, maybe not like gigantic stone fortress, but Kato needs to go to this place and retrieve the offspring of this tree and bring it to her so that they can fulfill this vow together. And in the meanwhile, Mila will be going to this place, and she'll be like preparing the ritual and preparing herself. And I think that actually, like, in her pack, she has like maybe even like a couple weeks worth of rations. We're just gonna like assume that she can carry that much. You know, it's like fucking lambus bread or whatever. Trademark? Question mark? I don't know. But so she has these rations, and she is prepared to be out there like you know, like the Buddha who meditated under a tree for like 30 days and nights and then, you know, got enlightenment. This is kind of her meditation. She's like going out in the late autumn, just a couple weeks before the dark winter comes, and she is going to pray, and she is going to convene with nature, and she is going to perform this ritual to pay back the debt to nature, to maybe the old manifesting spirits of the mountains, and she's going to need Kato's help to do it. So I actually think that this is the moment when we are going to end Chapter 2, and Chapter 3 is going to be they part ways. Mila off to the old road at Wolf Ridge to prepare for this sacred ritual that she has been just possessed with the urge to fulfill, and that's Mila, and Kato off to this old stone city in the mountains that nobody actually, you know, people would know about this thing if it were common knowledge, but like he actually, okay, so does he know what she's talking about when she tells him about that? That's like, I think, the last roll that we'll do for now. And I would say, well, actually, we can use the Ask the Oracle chart, and I think that it is it likely? Is it? I would say that it is unlikely. I don't know, 50-50. Let's go ask the Oracle. No. Okay, so he does not know. People don't know about this place. So she's seen visions of it, and maybe like scraps of descriptors of like how to get there, or like areas nearby or something. But there is this city somewhere in the mountains nearby that nobody has seen in the multiple generations since they've lived here. And Kato now needs to journey to that place, retrieve the seed of the sacred tree of this city, which maybe was allowed to die, and that's what that's the debt that she's trying to fulfill, is to plant this tree once more. And so that is where Chapter 3 will take us. And I'm really excited to get started. I may actually, just record that right after this. But thank you again for joining me for this experience. I know that it's been not a lot of, action and adventure and fighting dark creatures and whipping out this kukri and doing damage with it, but we do have a very cool setup for a story, I think, and I'm very excited for Chapter 3, so I hope that you will join me again as this story unfolds, and until next time, until we meet again, keep telling stories.